Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Jessica Zeaske, Managing Partner at Echo Health Ventures. Jessica, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And Nicola, very nice to be here today. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk about career paths and something that's very near to my heart, which is the strategic investing angle. My path has been, like everyone else's, only my own. Because I say that is that you talk to every single one person out there, and they really do have such a different path of how we come about this. My path actually started in academia, where I thought I wanted to be a professor of public health. And 1 year into this, now this is quite a while ago, I got working at a startup company, and the investor in that startup company asked me to start doing due diligence for some other companies. And I loved it. I felt like I really had the opportunity to meet with CEOs, to look at the data. My PhD is in public health, as I said, but really on the biostatistics side. And so in healthcare, as you're looking at risk, as you're looking at actuarial models, that was coming in handy. And that's really what I wanted to do rather than stay in the academic side. So yeah, I worked in private equity to help fund my PhD and finished that, and then stayed and have never left the field. And I feel very lucky to have never left the field, privileged to be able to invest. But what I still do every day is in that public health world. And because I really look at opportunities that are looking at the affordability, the accessibility of healthcare for all Americans. And I feel entrepreneurship is the path that we can achieve that, especially in this country, where we really need to see innovative payment models, new reimbursement models in the healthcare space. That means also partnering with some of the giants. And those giants, this is where the world of strategic investing often starts to come together. So my career path has been starting to work for that firm. I then went to back on the university side, looking at investing out of endowments into what we would all know as tech transfer, looking at those and what are the startup companies coming out of those, and then joined a firm called Lemhi Ventures in Minneapolis, where United Health Group was a very large partner of that venture capital fund. Stayed with that fund for 8 years, and we had some great opportunities to impact healthcare through our investments in that. Then joined GE Ventures out in Boston. And if anyone knows that GE Ventures team, it was a great place to be. And strategically, GE Ventures went a different route. And I had the opportunity to join Echo Health Ventures. And Echo Health Ventures really brings a lot of what over my career has come together in terms of, again, focusing on that. How are we changing healthcare? Changing, again, for the individual person, for the patient, by making it affordable and accessible. So the public health is really woven throughout my whole career by keeping me in the healthcare space. My expertise is really narrow, especially around payers, enterprise software, going into payers, insurtech, like the real plumbing of insurtech, the most boring topics you can imagine, but I have found you can really make an impact after you know them, and then you can innovate around them. It has been a wonderful career for me. And again, working with the CEOs, working to really change healthcare is why I do what I do. And I have the platform to be able to do it as a strategic healthcare investor. And I think that's a quick journey of how I've gotten to be in this. Not many people have done it their entire careers, but I really have in a lot of trials and tribulations along the way.
Very nice. So much to double click on. But I would just comment first that you say that plumbing is boring, but actually without this plumbing to work well, any beautiful innovation that can really bring better healthcare is lost.
But I'm talking to a fellow data person in TDK. Of course, you're going to say that. But where the go.
Absolutely. Now, I realize you moved very quickly onto your early stage of your career, but I want to ask about your education and how your education framed how you're thinking about your role as an investor.
Yeah, I went to Stanford as an undergraduate, and that is the time where we were just beginning to see people leave in Silicon Valley and friends were dropping out and we thought they were crazy. And as even the first year out of school, people were talking about how many options they had, and nobody knew what options were. But at least I had, at a fairly impressionable age, what startups and what that meant. I will also say, even back in my own family life and my own upbringing, my mom worked in that high-tech field in Silicon Valley. She actually retired from Oracle after 23 years and was with a series of other tech firms before that. Her background is actually in education and moved it into how you teach people and train people on how to use computers and talk about it and how can engineers use better communication. So I've been around my entire life tech firms and being in Silicon Valley and the 90s, there is an energy about startup companies. And so decided to do the route in stay in healthcare. But coming back around, that education and that foundation is then what distinguishes me in the depths of that. And I will say that's one of the things that I look for also in my co-investors of like, where do they really have some depth? Is it in financials? Is it in their network? Or is it really something they know deeply in the market? And I would say my education helped bring some of that market knowledge. After graduating and working and writing term sheets, and I realized that I was also one of the only people to not have an MBA. In my cohort of people that I was working with, I felt like there was some brushing up that I could do on the financial side and the terminology side. So I did get my MBA post as a part-time off the side of my desk for over a few years and chose to do that virtually. And I think that's a route that I think, especially for career professionals who are trying to get through, there's absolutely the option to go to in-person class and things like that. But especially in venture, when this is an apprenticeship and you learn it by doing it, and it's just the reps of deals that you see. That's how you really become a venture capitalist. And leaving to be 2 years to come back and then try and get a job can be really tricky. I have multiple graduate degrees. I love education, but there are more ways than ever to get that education while still getting the apprenticeship of a VC, which I think is so important.
I think there's even an argument that doing the part-time MBA and part-time continuing the apprenticeship is probably the best combo.
I will say, there's no best, because you have to look at every individual person. There's people who spending those 2 years and that network they've developed with their MBA class. There's just also other methods for hospital administration, or maybe it's computer science. There's some other degrees that are taking the time to really say, I want to move into this other career and things like that. Maybe, Nicola, for someone like me who knew what they wanted to do and really was skills-based, that made a lot of sense. For someone who really needs to take a big right-hand turn, may need that 2 years. Because we all know these jobs are very rare in venture capital. And once you're in the industry, trying to stay in it can be a battle also.
I really appreciate your candid feedback about this. I want to go back to how you got in, which is you did a due diligence, and that's how you got hooked. Tell me what made this due diligence fascinating that you decided that's what I want to continue doing.
Yeah. And do you say you're running towards something or running away from something? Maybe I was running. It turns out over the course of my career, I hate to use this term, but there's a scientific ADHD that I love. I feel like I get to write dissertations every 6 months when you do diligence on a company. And there was a notion of being in academia that you're in a segment and you're doing research on that in your entire career and you become an expert on that. Where I saw this opportunity where I'm like, wait, I get to learn about HIV prevention for 3 months and do a bunch of diligence. And then I'm going to learn about how to build a new insurance plan. And then I'm going to learn about how claims are processed. It was just intellectual candy that I was so excited about being able to do that and move that forward. That's how I ended up getting hooked. It was actually a very much an academic, intellectual excitement that I think probably anyone on this call has that intellectual curiosity. It's something actually as part of interviews I really push on. You have to want to drill down and you're like, oh, that's an interesting article. I wonder where that's going to go. And be unraveling the thread is what some of market trends and really understanding what's going on in a market. You need to have some of that intellectual curiosity. And mine really felt like it was going to be satisfied more in that process than potentially in any other career. I looked at McKinsey. I looked at some other consulting arms too, just to be clear in terms of what if they might be able to satisfy that, but was privileged enough to stay in this field.
What's the best ideal profile for your advisors?
Industry experience. The person we have or that is working in the data, one of their data EcoHealth advisors was originally at IBM, worked on numerous large corporate partnerships, and then was at Cambia, which is, again, one of our alliance members, and moved over to EcoHealth Ventures. Another one worked in Durham. He was actually at the Blue Cross North Carolina Health Plan, had a wonderful career there, and moved over to Echo. Now, that's one model. We've just hired someone in Little Rock, Arkansas for the Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield plan who's never worked in a blue, but has a former CEO in a large cardiology and knows the hospital associations, knows the provider community really well as knows the blues community because of all the work he's done in innovation in the Little Rock area and across Arkansas. So there's a depth of knowledge that he really brings. Just like CVC, there isn't one background, but that I'll come back to that intellectual curiosity, subject matter expertise, and the willingness of partnership that they bring to the table. And then I'll say a final thing, which is they work extremely hard with working with our CEOs to help them understand how to sell to a health plan. That is not an innate skill to CEOs who want to move fast and move, but it is okay, now you need to edit your slides to say this. And now we're going to go into this other meeting, and we've got to go do this meeting before we do this one, and build the relationship this way before we do this. That's what their expertise is. And so we're really looking for the EcoHealth Advisors team, that level of relationship where they can develop those relationships over time, but then also really intellectually interested in developing this portfolio also.
And I think it's back to this superpower. That's the reason why entrepreneurs would choose you. It's not you choosing them, it's them choosing you.
We do very much focus on that competitive advantage or competitive differentiation we hope to bring. As we look at, and again, there's a lot of people on the call that are looking to get into this industry, how you show up from the very first meeting, how you respond, how you email, do you ghost CEOs and then want to talk to them again 6 months later, who you bring, how you ask questions. This all builds up to the relationship you're going to have with a management team post-investment. And so that's another reason why you want to bring that EHA, that EcoHealth Advisors team in early, because they're going to ask questions that are relevant to voice of customer that I may not even know to ask. If we bring them in early, we're starting to show that depth.
Actually, let me double click on the email and the respect to entrepreneurs. I just talked about it with entrepreneurs yesterday. How do you interact early with entrepreneurs, especially when you say no? I think it's easy to say yes, but how do you say no, which happens way more often than when you say yes?
Yeah. I hold myself to a really high standard that I can't always live up to, which is really making sure that they're getting a piece of feedback, that they're understanding why the decline is happening, and especially when we've done a lot of diligence, that they really are getting some of that feedback of where and how we might look at it going forward. We do have the benefit of, if we've gone pretty far, we've gotten them some customer feedback. If we've gotten pretty far, they may have even been introduced to some of our alliance members, and that's a great, hopefully it will work out for some of those companies. But doing the respectful decline just comes back to the humble approach that I think so many venture capitalists should have and sometimes lose, which is it is an honor to have you share your idea with me. And thank you for taking the time to share it, and let me help you whether or not we're a fit. Let's figure that out. But it is a real feeling of they are the ones who are taking significant, huge risks, risking their careers and people's payrolls and things like that all the time. And to be in the position of power and then not be respectful of that would be a real red flag for me, for co-investors, and something we really work on our team to be very respectful of the entrepreneurs who are working so hard.
Very interesting. I want to shift gear now towards strategic value. And I can see with the attach rate, there is clearly value brought to your alliance members when you have your portfolio companies engaging with them. Is there more to that in terms of strategic value you bring to your alliance members?
So we look at it being, we are here with a dual impact at EcoHealth Ventures, the dual impact being financial returns as well as strategic value. And we report on both of those as I'm bringing a deal to the investment committee. I want to be able to report on both of those and have it be a true dual mandate. So the strategic value is that quote attachment rate. That strategic value doesn't have financial return for us on a cap table, but does provide them some additional strategic value. So sometimes it's the process of what we've learned saying no also. And at Echo, what we do is we turn those into documents that we call Echo Insights. And we sometimes use them for what you said at the beginning, the little mini PhDs. These are those documents. They're called Echo Insights. And the Echo Insights are slides that we've put together, which are the exhaust. They just come up when we're doing a lot of diligence on a market, when you're learning a lot, you're gathering insights. And so how can we, with a template, put all those in a nice format? So then when someone calls us and say, hey, what are you guys thinking about innovations in the diabetes space? Do you have anything? We have an Echo Insight that by looking at different diabetes companies, we can say, hey, these are some really innovative companies. We didn't fund one of them, but we really like these 3 companies. Or would you like to have a reintro or trends that we're seeing go into that Echo Insights? That is a discipline, again, that not every corporate venture has time to do, has the bandwidth to be able to do those, but that really makes sure that strategic value is codified and develop a library of them so that you can really present them over time.
So here I'm going to be very biased because we have something extremely similar. We call them TD Ventures briefings. We just published our number 31, so we're getting there.
Great.
And it's done by our investing team because the investing team is the one that can actually go deep into the due diligence, capture this knowledge, and then codify and share back. Any best practice in terms of the Echo Insights, in terms of maybe lengths, in terms of what to cover inside that you found works best?
Yeah. So your TVK briefing sounds like a very similar thing. We do them via PowerPoint because, especially in Zoom, an easy way to share. If it's a full Echo Insights, it's usually about 12 slides long. And that is designed to keep it a bit short. Now, there's probably some 12-point font in there, so it's not a true 12, but it is about 12 slides. And if we're setting up a meeting to talk about the Echo Insights, we present for half, and then we have them talk for half. We really aren't presenting during that whole time period. The purpose is to get even more insights of what they're looking at, and they can point out a few best practices. They always look the same. They know who Echo is, who are our alliance members, why we're doing this, that we're here on their behalf, et cetera. That first page is always the same because turnover, it's always good to make sure everyone on the table knows why you're here, why you're investing. The second page is something we call our Big 12. Those are the 12 areas that we know we're actively sourcing based on crosswalking of different markets. For instance, pharmacy triple aim or behavioral health. Those are areas we're actively sourcing. And so we lay out those so that they know the areas with a star under which one we're going to be talking about today in the Echo Insights. And then we go through the presentation. But it is nice to have the first 2 pages always look the same.
It's really interesting. And do you see these Echo Insights as helping your alliance members to visualize your work? Because clearly they see your investments, but they don't always see the due diligence you spend, especially if you decide not to invest.
I want to be very clear, and I know we're all very respectful of NDAs and things like that, that we're not including diligence materials. We're not including anything. And I get, not that any of us would ever do that. We firewall the company information, stays within Echo Adventures. And then these are the insights. Well, you just said the briefing. And I just want to make sure that, as you said, we double click on that. That is a really fast way to lose a reputation as an investor. Sharing things you learned in diligence, you got to bring it up a level. If it's an insight because you've talked to multiple people about it, that's a different thing than reporting out. So making sure you've trained everybody on your team about those lines and how to respect those, even if it's not under NDA, how you respect your reputation as an investor and confidentiality is critical. And then it is that next level up of, we built this market landscape. They may have 3 or 4 companies that we've never even heard of because they're living it every day to add to that market landscape. And that's where you really see the energy coming, is when you can work together on those and build trust.
Very nice. And I'm glad you made it very clear. Same for us, our briefings mention nothing specific to startups. We will list all the startups we talk to, which stage, but all public information, nothing specific.
Right.
We talk about
Yeah.
the market, the technology trends, and so on. Can I move on
Yeah.
to investment thesis? You talked about it
Yeah.
earlier. What do you think are the best practice for building an investment thesis? And it's very interesting because I've been looking online. Very few people talk actually about investment thesis. And when they talk investment thesis, mostly about investments pro. So I want to maybe ask you about how do you think about building an investment thesis?
I think the first thing when you're building an investment thesis is to making sure you're very clear about what you won't invest in and what are your guardrails around that. And that can be stage, that can be topic area. We don't have deep FDA expertise at EquiHealth Ventures. That isn't an area that we're going to write a thesis around. And then you've got agreements with whoever's giving you money. So you've got guardrails. Then those are what I call the investment thesis. We call it the 5 that we are really looking for, because these are like 3 to 4 year long. It's going to hold. Last year, we're going to look at value-based care 3 years from now. Like changing the reimbursement models are so critical in healthcare. That's going to be an investment theme. It's high level. It lasts about 4 years. And then every year, there are different themes I call them sector themes, but it's often where we get the Echo Insights out of. Those sector themes are what is going to be outbound calling and what are you working on that year? And those change, and the priority changes closer to a year. I mean, sometimes they last 30 days, but sometimes they take 3 years. I was looking with 2 of my other colleagues on the novel insurance design space. And as we talked to a number of different vendors out there, they were all using a company called Veracred. And so we're like, let's go talk to Veracred, and call out to my colleagues, Jonathan Reckert and Omer Ahmed, on that for picking up on that trend. And we were an investor in Veracred now. So sometimes also calling and pursuing one sector theme, you end up in an adjacent area that you weren't expecting, but that's the fun of doing this.
You talked about what you will work in this year. And do you signal it publicly that this is what you're going to work and study so that your co-investing partners and even entrepreneurs know to reach out to you for this?
Yes, on the phone. Yes, in panels or something like that. We tend not to publish the exact areas. I'm sure there's some reasons why around that, but I don't do that. But it's actually a really good point of self-reflection of what should we be doing in terms of our own bios. And I want that to be reflected not about me, but about what is EquiHealth Ventures looking for. What we are looking for companies in the healthcare space that's going to change healthcare, that's going to fit with the alliance members and things like that. And then there's a really broad kind of span of companies underneath that are available. So things I've done in the past are I've written articles of areas. Other team members have written articles on and published them about areas we're looking at. I know other funds do an article about the 10 things we're going to be looking for. I haven't gotten much pipeline from doing those in the past, so I don't do them anymore.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, in the last 2 minutes, I would really like you to talk about what are you most excited to invest in this year? Maybe that's your chance to be public about that.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, we're in for kind of a ride in 2022. I think the market shifts just a little bit on the side. So where I'm interested in investing is really focusing on that affordability side. And I know I've been talking about that through the interview, but I just don't think enough CEOs are focused on that. So what I want to see is if we're going to be looking at, for instance, diabetes and the care of diabetes for so many people in this country, like what are the ways that working Americans are going to be able to have access to that? When I look at care models, how are rural Americans going to be able to access this affordably? So that's really more of a theme than a market. Second, in terms of a markets we're looking at, I'm still really looking at population specific healthcare. There's so many, we have a portfolio company in the women's health space, Wildflower Health, but there are other populations that we want to make sure are getting the care they need. And we're looking at some of those. And then overall, administrative simplification is boring, as we talked about before. And I know TDK Ventures doesn't think it's boring, or neither do we, but some of the insurtech side of how that touches insurance, I think by cleaning up a lot of the pipes in healthcare and the data streams, we're going to be able to get more innovation in place. So that's going to always be a top priority for investing.
Thank you, Jessica. And I'm glad you are looking at getting the plumbing right. There's so many places healthcare could be better for everyone,
Yeah.
affordability, inclusion. Thank you, Jessica, first for the time to share all your best practices along your journey, even sharing mistakes you mentioned. So
Yeah.
it's very candid, but also for driving a better healthcare for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.